Imagine buying the greatest company in the world, but buying it at the wrong price. You pick a dominant brand with incredible management, consistently growing profits, strong market share, maybe even a monopoly, and everything looks perfect. But then you lose money for the next 5 to 10 years. How? Because even great businesses become terrible investments when bought at stupid prices. And this is one of the hardest lessons in investing, because most retail investors will ask, is this a good company? Is revenue growing? Is AI involved? What are analysts saying? But the real question that professionals are asking is this stock already priced for perfection? Today, we're going to break down how to identify if a stock is overvalued by looking at the principles used by super investors like Warren Buffett, Stanley Druckenmiller, and Peter Lynch. So what does overvalued actually mean? Overvalued, put simply, means the market price is significantly above the company's intrinsic value. And intrinsic value isn't just a guess. It's calculated and anchored in the fundamentals, be it future cash flow, growth potential, profit margins, a competitive moat, balance sheet strength, and even the company's risk profile. So when those inputs point to a company being valued at, let's say, $100 a share, and the stock is trading at $180 per share, something else is doing the driving. The market may be driven by hype, momentum, fear of missing out, narrative bubbles, or just simple, irrational optimism. But none of those are business fundamentals, and more importantly, none of them are permanent. The market may be euphoric for a long time, but eventually, the price and the fair value will always find each other again. The only question is whether that reconciliation will be gradual or violent. So let's look at 5 indicators for identifying overvalued stocks. Indicator number 1, valuation multiples become detached from reality. This is the first sign, perhaps the most measurable and often the most ignored. And here's why investors miss it every single time. So when a stock's price to earnings ratio goes from 20x to 45x, it doesn't feel dangerous. It feels like your investment thesis is becoming validated. The stock is going up, people are piling in, and that feels like the market is telling you that you are always right, or that you missed a train. But that's not the case. The market is showing you how far the intrinsic value of this company has drifted from reality. You can look at any of the following multiples, be it price to earnings ratio, the EBITDA multiple, price to sales, price to free cash flow. And when a company that historically traded at, say, a multiple of 20x raises to 45x, you have to ask one critical question. What has changed? Did growth double? Did margins expand dramatically? Did they gain a new structural monopoly? Or did the stock just go up? So if none of these have changed, then the market may be getting euphoric and getting caught up in the narrative. Peter Lynch said it best. PE ratio of any company that's fairly priced will equal its growth rate. So, to put that in context, a 15% grower at 15x earnings is reasonable. However, a 15% grower at 50x earnings, that's just dangerous. If growth slows even slightly, the multiple will compress. And when multiples compress on a high-flying stock, the damage is fast and deep. The market calls it multiple compression. I call it a reminder that gravity still exists. Indicator 2, expectations become impossible. Have you ever watched a company that had a double beat on earnings estimates and then the company stock dropped 12% anyway? If you've seen that and thought that the market makes absolutely no sense, well then, let me reframe that for you. Because the market made perfect sense. The problem wasn't the earnings. The problem was the expectations. So when a stock is priced for miracles, good is just never enough. And adding a bit of context, let's look at a company like Nvidia. The market is not only expecting a double beat every quarter, it's expecting record year-on-year growth and for Jensen Huang to come out and raise guidance each quarter. The market will not accept any weakness across any of Nvidia's key metrics. So this is the second indicator, and it's more dangerous than the first because it's invisible until it's too late. When a stock's price embeds assumptions like 30% annual growth for 10 consecutive years, record margins being sustained, zero competition, market dominance, and doesn't allow for any recessions, you're no longer investing in a business, you're worshipping a story. Warren Buffett put it simply, price is what you pay, but value is what you get. And when price demands perfection, the gap between price and value becomes a landmine. So, the moment investors stop pricing what a business is and start pricing what they hope it becomes, you're no longer in the assets market. You're in the expectations market. And that market is far more dangerous. So what are the telltale sign indicators here? Watch what happens on every single earnings day. If the stock needs a beat across every single metric, but if one miss sends it down 15%, the expectations were already impossible. That's the market telling you that the price was built on sand and the market has been pricing in perfection. Indicator number 3. Share price runs faster than business results. So here's a simple diagnostic I use that cuts through almost all of the noise. Take any stock that's had a big run. Now ask yourself, how fast did that stock go up? And how fast did the actual business grow? Because those two numbers are supposed to move in the same direction at roughly the same pace. But when they diverge, when the stock is up 120% in a year, but earnings grew only 10% and maybe free cash flow is flat, that gap has a name, and that gap is called risk. And risk compounds the further apart that those two lines get. So, Stanley Druckenmiller, one of the most successful macro investors in history, was obsessed with this dynamic, and he tracked price action alongside fundamentals. He understood that momentum matters, but he also knew that when the price gets too far ahead of the business, the risk-reward math flips completely. The upside shrinks, the downside grows, the asymmetry isn't theoretical, it shows up in the data every single time. Free cash flow is perhaps the cleanest measure for this check. If the stock is re-rated 30-40% higher, but the free cash flow hasn't moved, you're holding a stock with a deteriorating risk profile. Even if you're right about the business in the long term, you may have significantly overpaid for your entry point. The takeaway here, price and business value always reconnect. The question isn't if, it's whether that reconnection happens on your terms or the market's terms. Indicator number 4, everybody already owns it. Another sign of overvaluation is overcrowding. And I want to tell you about a personal moment that I think about every time a trade gets crowded. In October 2021, Bitcoin was trading above $60,000, and my very own grandmother called me and told me to buy Bitcoin. Her brother had recommended it to her, and now she was recommending it to me. And within just a couple of months of that recommendation and that phone call, Bitcoin dropped to $15,000. Now, I'm not saying all grandmothers are wrong about financial markets. I'm saying that when everybody already owns something, when hedge funds are fully positioned, when every retail investor owns it, and when every analyst on TV is raising their price target, you have to ask one very specific question. Who is the next marginal buyer? And this was a question first posed by David Tepper, because that's all a rising stock price requires. A new buyer will pay more than the last one. When a trade is universally popular, when the story is on every financial news feed, when the hedge fund positioning data is maxed, and there are no more buyers left, without buyers, prices can only go in one direction. Crowded trades can stay irrational far longer than logic suggests, and this is important. I'm not saying sell the moment something gets popular. What I'm saying is when signs of overcrowding accumulate, your margin of safety has just collapsed. Crowded trades can stay crowded, but when they break hard and they break fast. Examples being the dot-com bubble, meme stocks, certain AI names that peak enthusiasm, and the outcome, well, it's always the same. Indicator number 5. Management start acting like it's bubble time. This is the indicator most investors completely overlook, and it's hidden in plain sight, because when a company's management team starts behaving in a certain way, they're giving you information, not in their earning calls, not in their analyst presentations, in their actions. And those actions, when you know how to read them, tell you exactly what the people running the business actually think about their own stock price. So what you need to do is watch for the pattern. Aggressive stock-based compensation packages that dilute existing shareholders, constant promotional media appearances that focus more on the stock than the business, acquisitions that make no strategic sense, and the clearest signal of all, executives talking more about the stock price than operational performance. Here's the logic, and it's pure Buffett. When a stock is expensive, management can issue shares to raise capital pretty cheaply. They use their overvalued shares as a currency to buy real assets. Now, Berkshire Hathaway's buyback history is the ultimate case study, but in the opposite direction. Buffett only repurchased Berkshire Hathaway shares when he believed that they were trading below intrinsic value. When he stopped buying, it was a message. Executives don't always tell you the truth, but their capital allocation decisions almost always do. And if you want the unfiltered version, check the insider selling data. When executives are consistently selling large positions while their investor relations team is telling you to buy, that dissonance is a data point worth taking seriously. What I want to do is I want to take Palantir as an example. Key management and senior executive personnel are heavily compensated in stock-based compensation. The senior executives have sold approximately 4.2 million shares over the last month. Now there's something interesting about these sales. The insider sales peaked when the shares were at an extreme valuation above $200 per share. But now that the stock has dropped towards that $140 mark, insider selling has slowed. Insider share selling is real information that you can readily find online. So do the research for each company you plan to invest in before making any buy-side decision. So I want to ground all of this in a real company example, because abstract principles are easy to accept but actually hard to apply. So let's talk about Cisco, and I want you to really sit with this one. The year is 2000. Cisco is one of the most important technology companies in the world. Their routers and switches are the internet. They have real revenue, real dominance, and a real competitive moat. But the stock is trading at 125 times earnings. Every indicator I just walked you through was flashing. Multiples have detached from historical precedent, expectations that required sustained perfection for years, price that had run catastrophically far ahead of the underlying business, institutional and retail crowding, and management issuing stock and making acquisitions at peak prices. All in, a great company, but at the wrong price. Investors who bought Cisco at that peak valuation in 2000 had to wait nearly 25 years just to break even. Not because the company failed, but because the price they paid was completely disconnected from what the business was actually worth. The market didn't punish them for buying a bad company. It punished them for paying a stupid price for a great one. And that distinction is the entire lesson of this video. Everything I've laid out so far is the diagnostic, but I want to give you the framework. 5 questions you can run on any stock at any time in under 10 minutes. Because knowing the theory is one thing, and having a repeatable process is what actually protects your capital. Question number 1. What growth is priced in? So what I want you to do is pull the 3-year to 5-year compounding average growth rate for revenue, net income, and free cash flow for a starting point. Then ask the question, does the current valuation require those rates to continue indefinitely? If the stock needs 25 to 30% growth annually for a decade with perfect execution, that's not a projection, that's a prayer. Question number 2, are multiples above historical norms? So what we want to do here, we want to take your company and compare today's price to earnings ratio or their EBITDA multiple against the 12-month average, against the 3-year average, and even against its competitors' multiples to get a benchmark for the industry. If the multiple has expanded dramatically, ask what has specifically changed to justify that. Are there new contracts, margin expansions, new customers, maybe a new market? If the answer is not much has changed, then you have your answer. Question number 3, has price outrun the fundamentals? What we want to do here is maybe use free cash flow as your anchor. If the stock is up 30-40% year to date, but FCF, revenue and net income just haven't moved, the re-rating has no fundamental backing, and ultimately risk is rising. Question number 4. If earnings miss the next quarter, what happens? So this is a critical test and a key question you have to ask yourself. If a small miss, such as a 5 cents below consensus or even a minor guidance revision, could trigger a 15 to 20% drop in the share price, expectations are already maxed out. The stock needs flawless execution just to hold its price. And when a stock has no margin for error, it has no margin of safety either. Question number 5. Does management's actions match their optimism? Watch what management does, not just what management says. If executives are heavily compensated through stock-based compensation, consistently issuing shares, and selling large personal holdings at the time of stock price strength, that information is hiding in plain sight. Ask yourself, if people running the business believe the stock is undervalued, why are they cashing out so aggressively now? Do they not believe the share price is going to go higher? They must think that the stock is currently overvalued. And this is really important because sometimes capital allocation can tell you more than any earnings call ever will. Moving on to our conclusion. The market does not punish bad companies. It punishes investors who overpay for good ones. That is why valuation discipline matters. You do not need to avoid bad businesses. You need to avoid paying euphoric prices for them. Because in investing, the difference between genius and disaster is simply the price that you paid. Buying great companies matters, but buying them at the right price matters far more. If this video changed the way you think about valuing stocks, even slightly, then give it a like. It costs you nothing and it helps this community to grow and to find people who are genuinely trying to learn. We are on Patreon too. Take a look and you can subscribe on a free trial basis. Thanks for joining.